Hello, everybody, and welcome today to today's My Games Recruitment Show, where we, as you can see, are talking about how our special guest trebled their profits with 20% less people. Now, this is a really exciting subject, Mike, isn't it? And today, of course, I am joined by Mike Ames. Look at him, the magnificent beast.
Yes, thank you for that. And welcome to the show, Matt. A real pleasure to have you on, have to say.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
The reason that Matt's on, very simply, Matt, by the way, is the MD of the Executive Network Group, which is part of the network group at Pertemps, and a search specialist across 4 different brands. It's quite a chunky business, 40 odd people in the team. So it's a really good business. And we started working together some years ago, and I've just been in awe of what Matt and his team have done. And I just wanted him to come and share this with you. And you, please ask questions. Please, if you want to know something, ask questions. We're going to try and cover everything that we put in the LinkedIn post. So we're going to cover all of those things if we can. But if you've got questions, now's a really good time, because you won't get many opportunities to talk to somebody like Matt about this particular experience. So make the most of it. So.
Indeed you won't. And as well, for those of you who are new or just started watching, sometimes LinkedIn can have a little glitch. If that happens, just refresh the page and it'll bring you back. If that still causes you problems, we've put a link to the YouTube version of this, still exactly the same, in the comments below and in the description, so you can find it there. Okay, Matt, I want to get started. And you had been running ENG for about 18, 19 years before you started in on this process of kind of building a factory model. Can I ask, what triggered the change from, doing it for 18 years to now kind of overhauling it in this new way?
Okay, casting my mind back. So we sort of stumbled across a part of our business through, we used to run academies where we take a lot of trainees, and one guy in particular who still works for us now, Adam, was pretty prolific at winning work, and didn't really ever want to go down the fulfilment. And it's not something we'd done before. Everyone in our business was 360. So we started to build a sort of a small team around him in terms of recruiters. Then I think the workshop, Mike might have to remind me on times here, but Mike ran one of his workshops about the factory model for the network group, which I was invited to attend. And I think it was just not just one penny drop, but numerous pennies were dropping throughout that workshop, saying, oh, okay, we don't just have to do it in this little bit. We can probably do this lock, stock and barrel. Obviously, there was lots of risks involved with that. So I think probably the trigger was 2 things. We'd started to do it in a minuscule fashion, and then Mike's model was like, oh, okay, I've got a map here that I could do it with the whole business because it works well here. It could work in the entire business. And then Mike and I think we met for a coffee in Costa somewhere a couple of days after the workshop. And I said, right, show me the roadmap, show me how to do this. I want to have a go at it. And
I remember that meeting. You said to me, it was in Henley, wasn't it? You said I'm fed up of doing okay, and then I lose a couple of big 360s, and I've got to start again, and then someone else goes, I'm fed up of it. What have you got? Yeah. Pretty much what you said.
We'd probably been through that cycle in the 20 years we'd been trading prior to this. I don't know, 10 or 15 times. You sort of rise and you go and you think, this is it. We'll just keep adding to this. And then a couple of key people move on because that's what 360ers do. They set up on their own, or, the grass is greener, they move on, which is, part and parcel comes with the territory. But the impact of that is not catastrophic, but it's like, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and then you go again. And it did feel a bit Groundhog Day. And I mean, sat here now, it feels like, why did we ever do it that way? Why is it so rife in recruitment that it's done that way? And why doesn't everybody do it this way? But I guess in hindsight, it's a wonderful thing. But at the time, it was like, and we'd carry on repeating those mistakes. People would leave and you're like, that's crippled us for a year. Let's go and do it again. Let's recruit another load of 360ers. And when they get really good, they might move on. And so, I think it was a bit of a hamster wheel. And then this sort of light bulb moment came as a combination of 2 things. We were doing it in a tiny pocket of our business. We met you. So I think the planets just aligned really. And we went, right, let's go. Let's do it lock, stock and barrel. And I just wish I'd done it earlier.
Well, yeah, I'm willing to bet a lot of people.
I'd still have hair if I'd done it earlier, and
so whatever.
Okay, right. So I imagine there's people watching this now who sort of want to know what actually you change, because I mean, trebled profits, 20% less staff. Those are some good statistics there. So can you talk to us a little bit about what actual changes that you made during the last 2 or 3 years?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. It's not an overnight sort of story. I wish it was. We embarked on lots of different projects with Mike as a result of this model sort of that he created, and we sort of developed it as we went as well. We put our own things on top of the model, but I suppose the key things would be that we didn't do before. We productized our service. So we created a product that wasn't reliant on an individual 360er being good on the day and selling themselves, and building a relationship. It became an ENG sell. And I think Mike's terminology is you de-skill that sales process so anybody can do it.
And if they leave, your point was, I remember at the time in one of those meetings, in the room you are now, because I recognise that thing behind, it's like, well, if they go, they can't take the product, can they? No, they can't.
Yeah, and they're buying, or the clients are buying the ENG product and process rather than the individual 360. Now, of course, people still buy on relationships, and it's got to be delivered well and all that sort of stuff. But it just gives a bit more of a robust sales process rather than buying into the individual. And as long as that individual stays with ENG, you've got a client. And when they don't, whatever happens, I know we've got restricted covenants and all those sort of things, but those clients sort of just tend to evaporate when 360s move on. I'm sure whether they take them or whether they don't is sort of immaterial. So yeah, we productized it. Then we trained people on selling the product rather than themselves. Their sales ability went through the ceiling because they almost detached themselves from sales, because now they're selling something rather than themselves. So they actually got better at selling because it wasn't personal. They're like, well, this is what we do. You either like it or you don't. And whereas when you're selling yourself, that's quite a big ask, isn't it? Because, well, I hope they like me and all this sort of stuff. So people just got better at selling, I think, when you've got a product. Then the next step, there's so many steps, actually. I'm sure you'll talk about pillars and things later, Mike, but that's your pitch, not mine. But there was sales automation.
That was the marketing, the whole marketing piece, really. The content, the communications, all of that stuff was under Lauren, wasn't it? She came in.
Yeah, to get people to the threshold to then talk about our products. So I think, again, some people on this call might be thinking about the way we used to sell, the way we sell now, and how that's moved on so much. So we thought if we can get people that are wanting to buy from us rather than us trying to sell to them, it put a whole different spin on things. And so a lot of that was about awareness of who we are, what our product is. So a lot of content creation.
But on that, I want to say, Matt said earlier that he took our framework and built on it, which pretty much everybody does. This is one of those areas that ENG really, really built on our framework. And the lady that took it over, Lauren, just took it to a whole new level. In fact, she actually came on this show. If you actually want to watch that, I'll ask Kirsty to put that in the comments. It's well worth a watch in what she did around this whole kind of communications, collateral and content piece. She did it very well indeed.
She really did.
She did. So, good.
And then I think the other thing, I mean, the 20% less staff, and when I saw the headline of this, I was like, well, that doesn't sound great, does it? We got rid of I think 20% staff equates to about 8 or 9 people with us. But it wasn't really. It was just we removed the need for middle management, or any management, actually, which is quite an interesting statement for a recruitment company with about 50 staff, because we always found if you've got 360ers, whilst they don't need constant management, they need constant motivation and extrinsic motivators, and we'll do this if you do this, and all this sort of stuff, which is after sort of 20 years of doing it, it just became quite painful that you've got to extrinsically motivate someone to do something that they should be doing anyway. But that's just the nature of the beast. So when we moved to this model, we found that there was no need for middle management, because the model, it's almost peer accountability. Everyone's responsible for each other because you're all playing a certain part in a process, rather than just one person does everything and you've got to motivate them on any given day. This is like, well, you do this bit, you do this bit, you do this bit, you do this bit. And if we don't do all that, then it doesn't work. People seem to be far more accountable if they're accountable to each other than they are if they're accountable to the MD or their manager or whatever it may be. So that's how the sort of reduction in staff, it didn't sort of happen in terms of staff cuts. Just no. we just didn't need to add to people because we became more efficient doing bigger numbers with less people.
I think as well, just thinking about going back to those days, you know, in that room where you are and when I used to come in for the day. But I think that your attitude to those projects was very much cohesive. You realised they all fed off each other. Well, if you do the productization on its own, so what? Well, we got to change the way in which we sell. Well, we need to sell like this then. Well, okay. Well, if we sell like that, well, we're going to need people in different places. Yeah, we are. And I remember as well, I didn't have vast amounts to do with this. I think it was my framework, but it was very much your implementation of it, which was to become a sticky employer, you know, that talent acquisition and retention pillar that we have. And you did a really, really good job on that, I have to say. Could you perhaps expand just a little bit on that for us?
Well, I think, I was talking to Kirsty earlier about it. I think I was called, when we embarked on this EVP program that we've now got in place, it was at the start of 2021. You know, that again feels like a long time ago now, but we were, I said, just coming out of COVID. I think we had a new lockdown at the start of 2021 after we'd already embarked on what we were about to do. And I was called everything from brave to stupid to insane and various different things by peers and people within the group as well as externally. But I felt so committed to it that I was like, this can't fail as in, oh my God, this better not fail. It was just like, this is so much the right thing to do. I had no doubts. Maybe occasionally, like Liney better thought this better work, but I didn't doubt it. So yeah, we ripped up everything that we'd traditionally done.
But your implementation,
a brave step, but it was just so methodical in terms of what we were doing and the map that you'd given us, and we became so committed to it. Just made perfect sense. And by the way, we didn't, and still haven't got rid of 360. It's probably a third of our revenues still come from 360 recruiters, but they got better at everything they did because they learned from the different parts of the business. Going, oh, okay, and our 360ers sell more retainers now than they've ever sold because they're adopting some of the processes that the other parts of the business use.
And they benefit from the marketing that you do and the communications that you do and the content. They can use all of that, can't they? They just do it. It's just that they have to do all of it. They have to be.
In a second, I want to sort of delve a little bit deeper into that, Matt. But Mike, you have mentioned the 7 pillars of a couple of times, and you've mentioned how everything works together. And Matt has mentioned the kind of workshop, the masterclass that we've run before. So can we just have a brief second when we just talk about that?
Very quickly, I'll do that, Kirsty, if you can bring it up. So we've got a masterclass coming on the 19th of June. It's in person. It's the same thing that Matt went on, basically. And it just unveils the roadmap, really, that you need. If you've seen the webinar that we ran a couple of weeks back, where it introduces the 7 pillars, it's basically the next level down, which is why it's a full day. You come out of it with a plan. So we actually produce a plan, which is nice. It's very high level and everything. Very small group. You can see the cost. It is what it is. We charge for it. It's 100% refundable if you don't think it was worth it. It's fine. But I have to say, it sounds a bit cliched, really, but we do actually only have one place left. We've got Kirsty and I 2 of those places. So that's 2. We've got 12. We've got 11 people signed up. If you want it, if you'd like to come on that masterclass, first come, first served, then just do that. Just email me with the subject of masterclass, and as soon as whoever signed up first gets it. If you don't manage to get in, then you're going to go into our privileged pre-launch group, which basically means you are 100% guaranteed to get into the next one when we run it. Okay, so you will get this. It's just a matter of when, if you want it. So that's fine.
Okay.
Thanks for that.
So now, Matt, I want to sort of we've had a couple of questions, and they're great questions. I'm going to bring them up because they lead nicely into other sections that we're going to talk about. But you mentioned sort of you managed to balance the 360s with the layered approach, which I know is something a lot of people worry about. They think you have to be wholly one or the other. So can you talk to us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, well, look, I think there's still a place for 360s. By no means if we created a business where, and I hate all this 180 degree and 270 degree and 300 degree and all these different degrees of recruitment that they participate in. I think, there's still an absolute place for them. I think the challenge these days is recruiting 360s, and if we've got recruitment owners listening today, I don't need to share that with anyone. Recruiting good 360s is almost impossible. So then we revert to growing your own, and sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't because it's just not for them, or sometimes you do and you're successful and then they go somewhere else. So all of those things that everyone would have experienced. But I think these days, even trying to get someone to be a 360 is the role itself is too broad. You can't have somebody that can be good at all those things, in terms of, what is a 360 now? They've got to be good at social media, good at marketing, good at telesales, good at face-to-face sales, good at project management, good at candidate sourcing. If you list all the things out and then expect to be able to train someone to do that, I think it's an impossible task. And recruitment's one of the few businesses I think that do it that way. I've got friends who run businesses in different fields, and they're like, what? That's like, a salesperson then going to install our bit of kit or something. Surely it makes sense that they're separate, and people would be stronger at different things. So I think good 360 are the ones that have got a good network. They've been doing it a while. They're really established either in their market or their discipline, whatever that may be. And I think there's always a place for those. And if those people come across our threshold, we're always interested in speaking to them, and they benefit from all the other stuff that we do. But I remember Mike's phrase: you can't scale a business based on 360ers, because you can't business plan for where you're going to get them from, other than building your own academies and things, which we did for many years. But then it got to the point, even with our academies, that we're like, we're trying to train them to do something that just can't be done. I just don't think anyone can be a 360 from scratch. I'm sure that's a topic of debate, but in my opinion, it's too much to ask. And what you actually get is people that are 5 or 6 out of 10 at all those different tasks I just mentioned. Whereas if you break it down, people can become 10 out of 10 at one particular part of the process. They get more enjoyment out of it. They're better at it. The client gets a better service because they're getting all these 10 out of 10s rather than a sort of corner cutting 360. The more established 360s that we have in our business, they don't cut corners because they've been doing it so long. So they've got that network. They're not starting from scratch. So probably a third of our business now is 360 and 2/3 is in the model.
Which is a great balance. Balance.
It's a good balance.
Yeah.
And if some of those 360s left, you could have a choice as to whether to try and hire another 360. But if you couldn't get them, you just have more on the layered approach. It's fine.
Yeah.
Well, I think that you've hit a good point there, Mike. You can't replace them. That you can't. If a 360 leaves, I don't know, and they've been doing something for 10 years in a specific discipline and a model, you can't then, and as any recruitment owner will know, you can't then put someone on the chair and say, you do what they were doing. It's going to take at least a year, maybe 2, to even get close to what they were doing before, unless you get really lucky and you happen to find someone that's relocating or something that does exactly what they did. But even then, it still takes time to build that revenue back up. Whereas if you then embed their clients and candidates and desk into the model, you can pretty much pick up where it left off. So we probably wouldn't replace existing 360ers. We would just put it into the model. That doesn't mean we wouldn't hire 360ers. If they come along, they're established. It works for us.
Okay, so we've had a really great question from Rachel, and I think it's linked to the team, which is why I want to bring it up. So Rachel asked, how did you assess which person went into which part of the layered approach? Did you use psychometrics? Did you ask them? How did you convince the members of the team who went into layered where to go and how and to do it, really?
There was no convincing, I think, would probably be the first part of it, because again, and I know Rachel, hi Rachel, I think over my many years of running 360ers, people tend to be good at one part of it and less so at the other. And you always hear things like, oh, well, I've got to do BD. It's a necessary evil because I can't fill jobs unless I do BD. And then you've got other people that love doing BD, and they find the sort of candidate resourcing or tracking, a bit more of a laborious task. So once we broke down the role, saying we're going to have some people doing this, some people doing this, I could probably have a bit like an X Factor scene where you're moving people's photos around. I could have put them all into slots and go, I know what they're going to go for. There was a couple of surprises, but people just put their hands up and went, you mean I've got to do no BD ever again and I can just fill jobs all day? And their hands go up. Yes, please. That's absolutely me. And vice versa, with the people that go out and convert or win work. It's actually, and I think I've relayed this story certainly to Mike and other people, and people I've interviewed since for roles where they're just in fulfilment or the other. People that have come to me that were 360ers and they say, I just hate BD, I don't like it, I'm not very good at it. And I was like, that's interesting. I said, what does your current employer think about that? And they say, well, they make me do more of it. They make me do more of it because I'm good at filling jobs. So if I do more of it, I'm going to get some jobs and then I can do the bit I'm really good at. And I was like, isn't that? And again, I was one of those people, by the way. I did that for 20 years ago. You got to do more BD and you'll fill more jobs. But they don't like it. They're not very good at it. The second you say you haven't got to do it anymore, they're like, woohoo, it's, and then you become a sticky employer because they're only doing the bit that they like. So there was no convincing. It was really seamless in terms of, like I said, I could have plotted who's going to put their hands up for what, and it pretty much fell that way. And since then, we've hired people as well with very similar scenarios. There's one bit they like or one bit they don't. So yeah, there was no psychometric profiling or anything like that at the time. There is absolutely now when we hire people externally, so we can get a feel for what they're. But most people know what they like, and it's all. If they like it, they're good at it, and the more they do it, they get better at it because they're not getting distracted by the bit they're not good at.
Yeah, 100%. And I like that you mentioned the sticky employer element because, retention of staff means such a difference to a scalable business, having continual people there. Now, traditionally, in a 360 model, a lot of that would rely around commission schemes and commission structures and stuff. So Lee's had a great question here. He'd be interested to know about what kind of commission structures you use for the model. So can you tell us a little bit about that if you're comfortable doing so?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's always a big step, isn't it? Changing commission structures and things. So we completely revamped our entire structure to cater for one commission scheme that will cater for 360s, work winners, delivery consultants, recruitment consultants, whatever you want to call them in terms of the fulfillment side of it. And I think, again, I'm not saying all recruitment businesses, I'm talking personally from experience. We built a business based on high reward, sort of not low basic, but we deem low basic salary in terms of probably other professional sectors, but high reward. So you pay a modest basic salary and then reward really high for high performers, and people that are good, benefit from that. People not so good don't. We completely changed that, and we just said, look, here's a model. It's threshold based, and the threshold is based on a multiple of salary. And we just said, you pick your salary. If you want a high guarantee in terms of your salary, you pick your salary. If it's high, obviously your threshold will be high. If you want a lower salary and higher reward, that's great. And so as is, we call it built by you for you. People just pick and choose their salaries in terms of new people starting, and our existing people have career meetings and salary reviews every 6 months. So during that process, when we went from it, we had, and again, this I think is why I was called insane, mental, crazy by our own FD, let alone anybody else. We had people that doubled their base salary in the middle of a pandemic in January 2021. And we backed them by doing that. And then we had others that actually halved their base salary because they wanted to pay themselves less and reap the reward of the higher commission because they were competent and confident in their ability. So, yeah, we just ripped up that whole, if you're a senior consultant, you get this, and if you get this. We just said it's totally fluid. The role that you're in, you pick your salary. We tell you how the commission scheme works for that. And you go out and do it. There's no target.
I remember a conversation on that. By the way, in a couple of weeks' time, we got a commission scheme expert coming on the show, Carl from Conquest. So look forward to him. But I remember the conversation around that because, again, it's funny you remember things, but we were in the opposite room, not the one you're in now, and we were talking about this, and you said, well, how does this work then? And I said, well, basically, you can't pay people twice. If they're doing 360, they get paid everything. That's fine. It's easy, right? But actually, the more you pay people, then they're less desperate. They make less bad decisions. They stay longer because nobody ever leaves for a lower basic, even if they can get a higher commission, or very few people. So all of this starts to make you more productive and stickier. Obviously, you've got to get the model right. And I know at the time it took ages. We worked on it a lot to get it exactly the way you wanted it. I recall from those times. But it works, and it's been proved to work ever since, hasn't it? It's a durable.
I think you said, Mike, that a client pays you £1, and that you can't multiply that pound. It can only be, it's either split one ways, two ways, three ways, four ways. So it took us a while, as you say, to come up with the model, but
if you're just
doing really well, and our retention has been incredible.
Very high. One person last year, I remember you telling me.
93% our retention went to, and we were, our retention has always been good because of probably our culture and all the things that sort of recruitment companies are built on. People would often leave, not because of, or they'd stay because of the team and the environment, but now they don't leave because they're doing the job they love and they're paid well for it, and they're not doing the bit they don't love anymore. So I think that amongst lots of other things, that's what made us sticky. Our EVP is pretty strong now.
It is very strong, actually. It's exemplary. But you've got to remember that if you change the way in which people are paid, so you get paid less commission, but you make more placements because you're not spending half your time doing stuff you're not very good at, you hate, and it takes ages to get yourself up to speed. You're just nailing the thing that you're good at, so you make more money, weirdly. Even
our top biller in that particular model was, I don't know, 250, 300k, and now they're 600k, doing the same thing, but they've trebled their billings by focusing on one part of the process. So whilst the threshold's different, they're still earning more money because they're producing more, because they're better at it. It's all self-fulfilling. It's hard to get it all across in 27 minutes.
I know, and we're coming to the end. I know now, but
we are indeed, and I think Martin speaks for a lot of people when he says that such a refreshing way of looking at it, so out of the box, and making people feel happy about and have control over their own kind of wage is so helpful and so important.
If you want to grow a scalable business, you've got to have a stable team. It's the single biggest thing. So in the 90s, the first business I had was less than 3% a year, pretty much the whole for the 90s. And that was a direct impact on the growth that we had. Because every time people come and go, it costs you time and money. And so it's madness, really. As soon as that team stabilizes down, whoosh, up it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And if you could have a stable team of 360ers, I'd probably be on here talking about, we trebled our profit because we've kept 360ers for 3 years. But my experience over 20 years is it just doesn't happen. I mean, our retention probably used to be 75%, which is good in the recruitment world. I think the REC quote 56% or something. You lose nearly half your staff every year, which is incredible. But I think it's always a challenge. If you're losing 25% of your staff and you've got 50 people, then you've got to go and recruit 10 people every year just to stand still. So
100%. Okay, thank you. Right, so in a second, Matt, I'm going to come to you, and sort of people are watching this and we've discussed a lot, so we're going to come to you and figure out what's kind of had the biggest impact in a second. But before then, I want to share with everybody who we've got next week, Mike, because I think it's going to be an absolutely great show with Nick.
This is kind of a big thing, really. Increasingly, the recruitment industry relies upon emails, normally sent out by CRM systems or auto mailers like MailChimp. But the ESPs, the internet service providers and email service providers, are getting more and more cute around this and sending more and more of our stuff to junk. This guy, Nick Butcher, is an expert on getting your emails into your recipients' inboxes. So he's going to come and tell us why it happens, what you can do about it. It's going to be brilliant. We are really looking forward to this because I think we're going to hire him afterwards.
We are.
So we're going to be looking forward to that one. It's going to be good.
We're very, very excited about it indeed. Okay, Matt, as I said, we've spoken about a lot today and we've talked about a lot of things, but from your point of view, if people are looking to embark on this sort of journey and move away from that traditional 360 model and move to kind of replicate the things that you've done, what would you say is the biggest thing that they need to do?
Okay. Well, obviously there's lots of things to do, but probably the biggest thing, if I was going to sum it with a word or a couple of words, you've got to commit to it. You can't do bits of it. You've got to really commit. And you put a phrase up there that we used earlier. you've got to be prepared to destabilize what you've got to get to where you want to be. So there is an element of risk, and you've got to rock your boat a bit. But my personal experience of that is, I wish I'd done it 10, 15 years earlier. It's certainly made, it's turned my sort of recruitment business into a business, into a scalable consultancy, as opposed to this sort of Groundhog Day of starting again every year, or every time someone moves on, what are we going to, it's always the challenge of managing 360s. So yeah, commit. You can't do it in half measures. You've got to go all in with every step of it, because each piece doesn't work without the other piece. I think, again, you call them pillars, Mike, but they're all entwined. You can't just, so it's a big step, but it's absolutely the way to go, in my opinion.
100%.
And mine too, not that, anyone cares what I think.
Rachel agrees. She says, this is another push to solidify her business. She keeps procrastinating, and she knows it makes sense. And like you say, you wish you'd done it 20 years ago, but the best time to do it, the second best time to do it is now. So I think that's a great point, Rachel. So, guys, it's gone very quickly, and we are at the end of the show today. I thought
it was my turn.
Do you want to have a top tip as well?
Yeah. I know this is a broken record, but honestly, come to the masterclass. It's cost neutral for us. We don't make any money on that, as you can see for the pricing, but man, the effect it has. Come along, see what you think, just like Matt did. Perhaps say a bit more than Matt did when he was there. He didn't say anything when he was there. So good sign, because he rang me about it.
I was absorbing it all, Mike. I was absorbing it all.
Thinking. Okay, so I would like to say thank you very much to everybody who's watched the show, and for those people who made comments. We always enjoy a little bit of commentary. I'd like to say a huge thank you to Matt. You've been great today. You've added a lot of value, so thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much. I knew you'd be brilliant when you got on here, because you just told it the way it was, which I think is great. So thank you very much. Brilliant.
See you guys next week.